From pretty ugly looking moments of action in the middle of a Netflix picture, to some of the most distracting body swapping you're ever likely to witness. These are those times big money movies produce CGI that made you cringe in your seats. So I am Gareth, this is WhatCulture.com, and here are 10 more terrible CGI moments in big budget movies. Number 10, a pretty poor lizard return, Spider-Man No Way Home. With Rhys Ifans only returning as the voice of his Dr. Kirk Connors during the spider epic known as No Way Home, the shot of him reverting back to his human form was a deleted Amazing Spider-Man shot. The character spent most of his moments in the film wreaking havoc as the Lizard, and a rather cartoonish one at that, especially when colliding with his spider foes at the Statue of Liberty. In fact, throughout No Way Home, a film with a $200 million budget, this particular version of the Lizard actually somehow looks noticeably less impressive than the version fans first saw taking on Parker in 2012. That Amazing Spider-Man reptile felt like a rather convincing and tangible force to be reckoned with, whereas the MCU Lizard just ended up looking like a digital afterthought. The creators likely hoped you'd be too busy doing backflips over multiple Spideys and other villainous comebacks to notice. But we did. Number 9, a cartoonish bull collision. Red Notice. The first of a few horrendous Dwayne Johnson CGI happenings this list will be looking at went down during 2021's hugely forgettable big-budget Netflix franchise starting Red Notice, with The Rock and Reynolds connection ending up in a bull ring at one point. In the $200 million streaming service action comedy, said horned beast only goes and rams the people's champion in front of a crowd that were definitely 100% in the same place as the other two stars during the filming of this scene. Far from pulling the tension away from the aforementioned moment the beast hit the other beast, said evidently green-screened backdrop simply added to the overall awfulness on show as Rocky unrealistically soared through the air like an animated crash test dummy. Number 8, CGI Cheetah brings back Cat's memories. Wonder Woman 1984. Wonder Woman has done battle with a few truly terrible CGI creations since making her DCEU debut back in Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, kicking both Doomsday and Ares' poorly made asses over the years. But it was during her $200 million 1984 sequel when Diana Prince came up against arguably the worst looking big bad in the franchise's history. After initially having her wish to be more like Diana come true thanks to the Dream Stone, Barbara Minerva eventually decides that she instead wants to be number 1 and an apex predator. And you'll never guess what happens. She only goes and transforms into a weightless, clunky cheetah woman, with her fight with a golden suited Wonder Woman clearly going down in the dark in a bid to mask some pretty subpar effects. The entire thing felt like what would happen if Diana wandered onto the set of 2019's Cats and started laying into the rum-tum tugger, though that would actually be quite entertaining. Number 7, Will Smith collides with an odd version of himself, Gemini Man. The nighttime exchange between the two Brogans when the older version explains to his younger self that he's actually a clone in 2019's Gemini Man is about as remarkable a piece of CGI as anything you've likely been stunned by over the last 5 years. But the same sadly cannot be said for a few other daylight occurrences in the flick. On top of an often unbelievable motorbike chase that involves the older Brogan being comically walloped into a car by his heavily animated clone, the film's closing scene also contains a CGI moment so appalling it's borderline uncomfortable. With young Junior/Jackson Brogan enrolling into college late on, Harry chooses to stop by and say hello to his rather horrifying counterpart, but what could have been a touching moment between the two was hugely undermined by Jackson looking completely dead behind the eyes here, and like an unsettling cartoon when standing in direct sunlight. It was damn creepy. Number 6, the hospital baby saving scene looked bad on purpose. The Flash. This year's The Flash contains some of the most atrocious digital effects to appear in a big screen movie in the last decade or so. And if that wasn't bad enough, apparently some of the routinely bizarre CGI on show here was entirely intentional. Wonderful. That's according to the film's director Andy Muschietti, Variety, with the filmmaker explaining that he very much wanted the moments Barry Allen rapidly saved a number of animated babies from splatting on the floor after falling out of a hospital window to look as weird as it ultimately did. This relentlessly ugly water world was actually what Barry saw when traveling at such speeds. Even if this was a conscious choice, that doesn't necessarily make it a successful one. Most folks ended up being too distracted by the creepily brought to life CGI infants and awkward way this Flash darted around the debris to care about what could have been a fairly impressive set piece in the $200 million flop. Number 5. Skinny Rock, Black Adam. Sticking with the DCEU for this next substandard CGI moment, Dwayne Johnson's attempts to change the hierarchy of power in said universe will ultimately be remembered for little more than a Superman promise that would never be fulfilled and some shoddy digital face swapping. That latter laughably bad effect goes down during a flashback in The Rock's $200 million Black Adam superhero flop, with fans being treated to Teth Adam during his skinnier pre-Shazam days. Instead of nailing the sort of outstanding effects seen in the likes of Captain America the First Avenger, when Chris Evans' head was rather seamlessly attached to a smaller human to create a pre-super serum Steve Rogers, the folks behind Black Adam couldn't quite get their digital face swap right. Johnson's head never felt like it belonged on his tinier frame during these uncanny sequences, and it's unsurprising to learn that his odd skinny appearances resulted in a ton of audience members struggling to keep a straight face during the DCEU dud. Number 4. Indy's son goes for a bizarre swing. Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. While there were still a few inconsistent digital creations here and there in James Mangold's Dial of Destiny, looking at you Indy horseback ride in New York, the film didn't come with quite as many unforgivably terrible CGI moments as Steven Spielberg's divisive final big-budget indie tale in 2008, along with the quite dreadful shots of a ton of CGI ants chomping down on a henchman and a few random prairie dogs in the desert. Shia LaBeouf's infamous monkey business also looked pretty awful back then, and even worse now, with Mutt Williams attempting to keep up with his whip-cracking dad whilst hanging up high in a tree. The appearance of a friendly monkey gives him a terrific idea. Before you know it, he's swinging along with some poorly constructed animal rascals in front of a clearly artificial background, and an otherwise quite thrilling chase is swiftly overshadowed by one of the most ridiculously silly and second-rate pieces of CGI of the 2000s. Number 3. Finn and Rose ride some fathiers. Star Wars Episode 8 The Last Jedi. Rian Johnson's The Last Jedi possessed some of the most spectacular digital effects of the entire Skywalker saga, with the absolutely stunning Holdo maneuver and the detail creation of Supreme Leader Snoke still standing out today. But not every Episode 8 CGI moment in the $300 million movie left jaws hitting the floor for all the right reasons, sadly. Perhaps the most jarring set piece of the whole sequel trilogy went down during Finn and Rose's mission to find the Master Codebreaker on Canto Bight. As the two Resistance heroes, BB-8 and DJ, escape the casino world, Finn and Rose decide to hop on a few horse-like fathiers. But in a film that boasts those aforementioned gorgeously crafted beings and beats of action, this prequels-esque blur of digital creatures, and the uneven way John Boyega and Kelly Marie Tran are attached to the back of one, sticks out like a particularly sore thumb. However, the practical fathier used when meeting one of these beautiful alien animals for the first time definitely still deserves some love. With this incredible animatronic no doubt convincing many there was actually a bunch of llama lions out there in a stable somewhere, before the incoming CGI mess was unleashed, of course. Number 2. Marvel Studios are forced to fix a dreadful floating head. Thor Love and Thunder. Folks were quick to call out Thor Love and Thunder's various dodgy looking computer generated helmets and one particularly lousy floating head. Hilariously though, Marvel Studios actually took note of that latter offense and went out of their way to quote unquote fix it, and in the process they remarkably managed to take an already awful moment of shoddy CGI and make it worse. As Thor and the gang chat about their new adversary Gore the God Butcher, none other than Heimdall's son Axel shows up via his ability to project himself across the galaxy. And it was during this moment that what felt like a lackluster effect created in about 10 minutes flat flashed onto the screen, with Axel's cheap-looking FaceTime being heavily criticized, both before and after it was apparently improved for its Disney Plus release. With a budget of $250 million, it's pretty alarming that a film of this size was still having to clean up its VFX a few months after its initial release. And even then, the end results resembled a poor man's Teletubby son. Number 1, a rather ugly plane fight, Uncharted. Tom Holland may have very much thrown himself into the many dangerous stunts present in last year's big screen adaptation of the much-loved Uncharted video game, but that still couldn't keep some of the set pieces in question from feeling disappointingly bland and fake in the end. Right from the off, fans are thrust into a sequence that is impossible to fully believe in, with Holland's Nathan Drake struggling to keep himself from falling off a rather large plane's cargo. Now, it is undeniably impressive seeing Holland occasionally launch his actual body from box to box here, as revealed in the film's behind-the-scenes footage. But those unfortunately rather cheap-looking times the character has clearly been fired across the sky via clunky CGI instead quickly pull you out of the excitement. Even with a sizable enough budget of $120 million to make the flick, arguably the film's biggest action sequence still ended up looking like one of the ugliest and most uninspired pieces of green screen mayhem of recent times. So if Holland and the gang do ever decide to go and look for some more treasure, hopefully they focus on creating a few more action-packed moments that don't somehow feel less realistic than the video games they're based on. And that's our list. Know of any other terrible CGI moments in big budget movies? Well, let us know all about them in the comment section right down below, and don't forget to like, share, and click on that subscribe button while you're down there. I've been computer generated Gareth from whatculture.com. Cheers for watching this video today, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Bye bye!